Welcome back to True Crime and Headlines with Jules and Joe. I'm Jules.
And I'm Joe.
And I'm a former educator and a lifelong answer seeker.
And I am amazing.
No truer word was ever spoken. And she is...
I'm a mental health professional most days.
Most days. And together we seek out the why and not just the how behind the cases. And hey, we're so glad you're here. If you are
Whoop, whoop.
Yeah, okay. Party, Joe. And I was talking to you, Joe.
The steroid.
Joy, you're on steroids?
Yeah, for my respiratory infection, yeah. If I sound a little nasally, a little hype, it's my steroid.
You always sound horrible in this studio because you're allergic to the blankets on the wall. I'm so sorry.
She has not gotten rid of the blankets.
All right. Well, this is episode 16, part 2 of 2. And this is Missing in Texas, Keith Roberson. So if you've not yet listened to part 1, just go back and do so and then rejoin us here. We will always be thankful to have you back when you are ready. Joe, I was talking to you too.
Woo!
Whenever you're ready, Joe, we got you back. This is the case of the disappearance of 26-year-old Caucasian male Stephen Keith Roberson, who was last seen on foot fleeing the scene of a two-car collision on an interstate in Sonora, Texas on September 5th, 2018. In part 1, we told you that we would dive into what happened. Where is Keith? How did he go from running erratically from his truck at the scene of the collision to still missing in 2023? You know, in part 1, we told you that we would dive deeper into what happened. Where is Keith? How did he go from running erratically from the truck he borrowed from his aunt's boyfriend at the scene of the collision to still missing today in 2023? You guys, that's over 5 years. 5 years ago, without a single trace of Keith Roberson.
Nothing.
Nothing. Absolutely nothing. And the truth is, we don't know. And we don't know because according to a 911 call, which was allegedly made to the police in Sutton County, which is West Texas, Keith was running through the traffic trying to flag cars down, Joe. He's waving his arms, trying to get cars to stop. But get this is really odd. When a driver does stop and he pulls over and asks Keith, hey, do you need some help? What's going on? Keith flees from him and continues to try to flag other cars down, and he's never to be seen again. Odd, right?
That doesn't make any sense.
It doesn't make any sense. Well,
and we don't know if he stopped to help the other person or even check on them, right?
According to police who reported to Sharmon that there were eyewitnesses that said Keith fled the scene. It's not documented as a witness statement from anyone. It's just by word of mouth, which is not appropriate police protocol.
And remind me what time this accident occurred.
This is between 9 and 10 p.m.
Okay.
Yeah, on September 5th. So it's dark, it's night. And so he's running through it at night. So you also have to wonder, visibility, what people were actually able to see. And this was a busy road.
Were there any drugs in the car?
No. Well, let's go into the police file and look into the eyewitness reports because, hey, if the police told Sharmon Roberson, Keith's mother, that a 911 caller witnessed Keith flee the scene, wouldn't they have access to that caller to take a report? Wouldn't that be something a police officer would want to track down? An eyewitness to a crash where
someone
the person
was severely injured
and the person responsible fled the scene. Wouldn't you follow up to get a written statement if you think this person is now worthy of a charge and it now has a warrant out for their arrest, which he does? Wouldn't you want to build your case? Just a question.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it was not happening. It did not happen. Just put that bluntly. There's no report of the person who made the call. There's no written eyewitness reports. There is a reference to he was seen fleeing the scene on foot, but by who? Big Bird? You can't tell me who it was. It doesn't matter then. You cannot claim to know that unless you tell me who saw it at the scene.
Yeah, it seems strange.
Sutton County Sheriff's Office posted this on their official Facebook page on September 9th, 2018. Quote, wanted subject, Stephen Keith Roberson, Sutton County Sheriff's Office, is looking for information on this subject involved in a motor vehicle collision 9/5/2018, resulting in serious bodily injury. Keith Roberson fled the scene prior to units arriving and has not been heard from. Keith may have been picked up on IH-10 about the 415 westbound mile marker. Keith has 2 active felony warrants from Sutton County. If you have any information on this subject, please call the Sutton County Sheriff's Office at 325-387-2288 or message us on Facebook, end quote. So they put officially 2 warrants out for his arrest.
Those 2 charges or warrants, whatever they called them, were not from former charges. Those were the result of the accident.
That's what we are led to believe, because in the police report, it does, for the crash scene, it does say the charges against him. And I'll go into those, the 2 of them.
But I mean, so much could happen. He could have, his truck flipped. He could have had a head injury. It could be substance use. It could.
Well, I don't know the flipping or the spinning. It wasn't clear to me the exact trajectory of the.
Regardless, it was an accident that caused serious bodily injury to somebody else.
Exactly.
So it would not be out of the question for him to have obtained a significant head injury as well.
Exactly. Now, I did ask Sharmon about Keith's active felony warrants. So I did ask her about that just to follow up. And she wasn't sure if there were any previously. She didn't know. And I tried to look into that information. I wasn't able to access that information, which I'm typically able to. Mm-hmm. But I was not able to at this point. I don't know. It could be my error. But I did not see those. I did see the 2 active ones from that crash that we're talking about in question. Now, according to the website, the Charlie Project, if you've not gone onto the Charlie Project, it's a great nonprofit that helps bring awareness to missing people. The Charlie Project says, quote, missing from Sonora, Texas. He's classified, Joe, as endangered missing. He is 6'2", 175 through 185 pounds. He had a T-shirt, jeans, and steel-toed boots on. And it says he is a Caucasian male, brown hair, hazel eyes. Roberson may go by his middle name, Keith, or the nickname
Dirty.
His left earlobe is split, except for his face, head, and neck. His entire body is covered in tattoos. And you guys, listen up, because these are the specific tattoos that you'd want to be on the lookout for while you're looking out for Keith in any Texas or surrounding areas. These are the identifying ones. He's got 2 women's heads on his chest. The phrase, prepared for the worst, praying for the best, on his collarbone. An eagle with wings on the right side of his torso. The phrase, like father, on the left side of his torso. A drawing of the actress Marilyn Monroe on his back. A ship's anchor on the inside of his left arm. A dove on his right forearm. A ribbon around a cross on his right arm. And the phrase, quote, snitches get stitches, quote, on his left leg, and skulls on his right leg. And it concludes by saying Roberson is colorblind. So taking a look at the scene report that was provided to me, I did want to share the charges, the takeaway that I took from this report. Now, it doesn't have so much information for us. Again, information is limited in this case as far as the days of, proceeding and going forward from the accident. But the 2 charges, one charge was fail to drive in a single lane.
I didn't know that was a charge.
Here we are. And then fail to stop and render aid, resulting in serious bodily injury.
Okay, so that's our answer right there.
Yep. And now we find ourselves in the morning hours of September 6th. Keith does not arrive to work, something he would not typically do, as we discussed in part 1, because he loved his job. He's trying to turn his life around, albeit he was still in the wrong crowd, still responsible for his own actions. But the compartmentalized part of him going to work, and it's almost like two different Keiths.
It's remained there, yeah.
Yeah. So he really cared about his career, so he would show up. So it's not like him to not show up. Keith's father, Bubba, actually was working with Keith at the same job site at this time. He joined Keith at this job site in the oil field. So he was able to know immediately when Keith was absent for work. Bubba then calls his ex-wife, Keith's mother, Sharmon. Now, she lives a couple hours away in the next town, and he tells her, hey, Keith isn't at work. Can you get a hold of him? You know, she's not worried at first because Keith's recent behaviors, he's going back down a darker route like he had done before.
What was her, let me pause you there. What was her evidence for that? How did she know he was kind of getting engaged with things he shouldn't be? What does that mean?
He was very open with her from my understanding, and she knew the people he was hanging around were not into good things. And so I think she was extrapolating the information from, you know, you hang around the bonfire, you're going to smell like smoke.
They found the acid in the car at one point. She knew he did marijuana at one point. Did she speculate about what substances he was using with these people?
No.
Okay, I'm just curious with that.
Not to me.
Okay.
But again, she does appear to have a very, very realistic view that her son was struggling. And she's very open about that. And we've talked about that here at True Crime and Headlines so often is no matter if they were struggling, strung out on drugs, our flow chart for the police, is this person missing? Yes? Okay, search for them.
Yeah.
Find them first, then the consequences for their choices can come next. No one is above searching.
Yeah, I agree. I am just really curious about his tattoo, like father. And so I'm wondering what that means specifically.
I am very curious about that one too. That one really stuck out to me. Also, snitches get stitches is such a culture in those type of circles.
In prison alone.
Yeah.
Might be a prison tat.
Prison tat, drug-related tat. It's just this mindset of you don't snitch. And I'm wondering if that all kind of comes into play and ultimately contributes to Keith's missing status. So she's not worried, like I said, at first about him because she doesn't have rose-colored glasses about what's going on with Keith. She knows that his girlfriend and him have a really rocky relationship. She knows the girlfriend was also previously in jail. She knows the friends he's been hanging around with. So maybe Keith just stayed up too late partying, and this is the time where he overslept. Or maybe he was out with his girlfriend. She does call Keith's phone over and over again, and he doesn't answer. And again, she's still not that worried at this point. So a few hours go by. And that's when Sharmon begins to worry because now that's not like him to ignore his mother for that long. Now, she reports to me that she takes her time getting ready to drive the few hours to where Keith was living in the RV on site and working. And she was advised by her lifelong childhood friend who was actually high up in law enforcement, a sheriff in her hometown, which was about 6 hours away from where she was currently living. But she calls him and he says, go ahead and file a missing persons report. So she does. And she then receives a phone call that day stating that Texas authorities have information about what happened to Keith. And they tell her, your son was involved in a 2-car collision and he fled the scene and he is now missing. She immediately knows something is wrong with Keith. She says this is so out of character for him to flee a scene. If he knew someone else was injured to that degree, he would not flee the scene, according to Sharmon. She said that was not his character. My question is, was he on drugs?
Yeah, I mean, substances can change your character, but now we have 2 incidents that could have caused some sort of head injury.
Yes.
We just don't have enough information.
We don't have enough information, which is extremely frustrating for all parties involved. Sharmon began doing what a mom does best. She goes full mom beast mode, and she begins searching all over West Texas for her boy Keith. This is her only son, y'all. She knocks on doors. She visits gas stations asking, showing pictures. Have you seen Keith? Has anyone seen him? Have you heard anything about him? Maybe he was injured. Is it possible, like you said, Joe, he had head trauma? Was he disoriented? Maybe he was picked up and dropped off somewhere. Could he have been intoxicated or on drugs and not aware of...
But the fact that his body was never found.
Correct.
Where is he?
Correct. So could he have panicked and fled the scene because he wasn't in his right mind? So
yeah.
Could he have thought, oh my gosh, I killed this man and fled the scene?
It's possible.
If she knows that her son wouldn't have fled because she knows he wouldn't have left someone injured, what if he thought this person was already dead?
Mm-hmm.
And he's on drugs, not in his right mind, fled the scene, fight or flight kicks in, panic, I don't want to go back to jail. My job's at stake, something I really, really care about. So now I'm fleeing the scene. He seems erratic and disoriented anyway.
When that guy stops him too, yeah.
According to quote-unquote eyewitnesses. So, we talked in part 1 about Keith's family history of his dad having been diagnosed with bipolar. His dad also had a history of being on drugs. Now, we don't know his current state of life choices because we're not involved with Bubba. We haven't heard from Bubba. We haven't reached out to Bubba. And we want to remain the focus on Keith. And Keith's mom is the mouthpiece, the one leading the charge to find her son. So that's why we have the information from Sharmon and not from Keith's father. A search was conducted of a nearby land. So there was this big kind of resort area with a lot of acres for hunters right off that interstate where Keith was last seen. And they were able to get permission to search this area. And a helicopter was provided. And it actually ended up being paid for by the managers of the facility. Oh. Yeah, really sweet gift. And they were praying with Sharmon and crying with her. And it was just very, very sweet. They just saw this mom distraught trying to find her son. Yeah, and her friend who was the sheriff in the hometown came down and he was there with her, and he ends up being a really big advocate and pressuring the local department to actually do more, do your job. Let's go. And they went up in the helicopter, and people were out on foot and on horses searching the land. They found nothing.
What in the world?
They found nothing. And it would take 2.5 years for Keith to officially be put on a missing persons list. Do you want to guess why?
Because he has a warrant?
Yes. We learned about that with Kaylana, that they told her she could not be listed as missing if she had an active warrant for fleeing the police. We also learned that was not true. Mm-hmm. There are ways around it. And it took 2.5 years to finally get Keith listed as missing. And that's because Sharmon had to make a scene, raise some hell to get him put on a missing persons list. Now, she says to me that she was asked by one of the officers on the case, why would you want a missing person when he's got warrants out?
Oh, dear.
Let me list the ways.
Yeah, it's quite dismissive. Wow.
Yeah, and that came from Sharmon. That was what she told.
Perspective.
Yeah, her perspective, what she told me. But, we've talked about this. Are they on drugs? We don't care. We don't care. Can you say, oh, he's a crappy person, he fled the scene?
We're all entitled to poor decisions.
We are all entitled to poor decisions. I like that. We are. We've all done it. Who knows what we would have done? Who knows if we had lived the same life as Keith, if we would have been in the same position, given the same exact circumstances, if we would have done the same thing and taken the same path, we would still deserve to be found and searched for, at the very least. Very basic human aid.
And ultimately, even if he has a warrant for arrest or charges or whatever, you're innocent until proven guilty also. So,
yes.
Sure, are there these allegations? Yeah, but that doesn't mean he's guilty of the crime either.
Exactly. Sharmon, she's worked tirelessly to find her son. And I wanted to know, what do you think happened, Sharmon? What do you think happened? Well, get this. According to coworkers of Keith's, the coworker confirmed that Keith's father, Bubba, came to Keith's RV the morning he was missing and removed many of Keith's clothes and personal belongings. Why would he do this? Let's get down to some theories, shall we? Because that's the same morning he calls Sharmon and says, our son didn't show up for work. Can you get a hold of him? And so what? His next linear line of thought is, let's go take his clothes out of the RV.
Why?
Why wouldn't it be, let's see what happens?
What are the theories?
Okay, so yeah, let's. I mean, you can come up with some of these too. These are, I mean, basically some of the first things we think about is, let's go to the basic one. Did his father need clothes for himself? Was he an opportunist? Did he want some clothes? Doesn't seem likely. I see your face. I know, but I'm just starting with the most basic. I'm wondering if he
thought that they were contaminated with methamphetamine chemicals and would somehow get traced back to Bubba or something.
Oh.
Because when somebody is in a meth house, I mean, everything has to get disposed of.
I wonder if he would take the whole damn RV then.
Yeah, I mean, a couple of items doesn't make sense.
No, it does. It doesn't make sense, but that is very Walter White Breaking Bad thinking of you.
I'm pretty bad breaking.
I'm pretty bad at breaking.
Bad breaking.
We have some breakdowns every now and then, don't we? We take turns, though. Okay, so then let's go to the next one. Let's go to extreme. Did his father pick up the clothes for Keith because he knew where Keith was?
Oh, I hadn't even thought about that.
Look, I'm not accusing. I'm just pondering, and I'm just anticipating potential questions that many of you guys, our friends listening, might have about this case. And
how far did Bubba live where the accident was?
Well, Bubba was in a hotel, and I believe is about 40 minutes away from the accident because he was not living permanently in that town. He was taking a job there. So while he had that job, he was at a hotel. And moving on with that theory, did Keith's dad pick Keith up? Or did someone else pick Keith up? We saw that he was flagging down cars. Did somebody find him and drop him off at his dad's motel? Did he lay low there? And is that where Keith ended up going missing? Did someone else come get Keith?
I mean, they're not that far from the border.
They're not that far from the border. That's true. Did he get involved with the wrong drug crowd, and was something done to Keith because of that? Was this drug-centered? Was there a panic? Did he want to get out of the state because he believed he had killed someone and went into panic mode? Some people wonder if Bubba went into protecting my son mode. Did he just help him lay low for a moment? Why would he take his clothes out of the
I don't think
RV?
That he would think to call Sharmon, though, and say our son is missing.
Unless he was trying to come up with a cover.
I mean, that's a lot of that takes a lot of thought power to think ahead to that.
Yeah, I think so, too. And knowing what I know little of Sharmon thus far is I would imagine that Bubba would know that Sharmon would not rest until her son is found.
Yeah.
So that's,
I mean that started the ball on finding him.
Absolutely. So that's a really good question, and in defense for Bubba, maybe he's not involved at all.
Yeah.
Or maybe all he did was let Keith sleep there the night, and Keith was going to come back to work the next day, but he didn't have a car anymore. Yeah. It's very, very confusing, but I cannot stop coming back to why the heck did he take Keith's freaking clothes that morning?
How did Bubba know he didn't show up to work, though? I mean, Keith's an adult. Did work call Bubba?
Well, they worked on the same site.
Oh, Bubba and Keith did?
Yeah. That's why Bubba was in town living out of that motel at the time while he had this contract on this job where he joined Keith.
Oh, I didn't realize that. Okay.
Yeah. There are some theories that Keith was in trouble for drug money, a drug debt that wasn't his debt, that somebody else that Keith ran around with ended up blaming and putting the drug debt onto Keith. So Keith ended up having a target on his back. Very interesting theory. It came to me out of confidence. You're looking at me like, what?
But I mean, that's so unrelated to what happened. He was in an accident.
He was in an accident, but let's tie the strings. He was in an accident. He goes to lay low. But when you are on drugs, what do you need more of? Drugs. So you call the same people you're running around with to get more drugs. And something could have happened to him not related to the accident. Something could have happened relating to the people he was around.
Yeah.
And it could have happened days later,
yeah,
weeks later. We don't know. And that is so frustrating. I can't imagine what the family goes through. You know, did the police follow up with Bubba? Did they look at the motel cameras? Were there cameras at the motel? Did they interview the housekeepers? They could likely tell if there was more than one person in that place. What we know right now is we don't know. And the answer, I'm just going to go ahead and say it's likely not that they didn't follow up with that. I don't think it's likely that they did an extensive that search for him. Just saying. Based off of previous behaviors and what we've heard so far, I don't think that this was done. But that would be a very quick indicator to know, okay, if Keith went to the motel, he would be on camera.
Yeah.
A parking lot camera or something. It may be in a lobby. You got to eat. Also, Keith's computer and wallet were in the truck on the scene, but his phone wasn't. His cell phone was not.
Did they track it?
They don't. So Sharmon was able to access his records and was able to see that he made some phone calls that night.
Before?
She did not have the timestamps. And that's when I'm like, why was this not a warrant to get his phone records? Why did the police not do that? We could find out who he called. We could find out the towers, the tracking. Did it ping?
Negligence.
Where was his location? Why was this not done? Okay, so you think this guy is a druggie. Okay, cool. But what about also the part where you do your job because you think he's in trouble, because you think he's causing trouble? You want to find him to prevent anything else from happening. You have this guy who's doing negligent, careless behaviors now on the loose. Wouldn't you want to do everything to secure him? Whether or not you're looking for him because he has a warrant or because he's a missing person, why aren't we looking for him? Period. Why aren't we doing more to not only help prevent something else from happening to someone else in the future, but to prevent something from happening to him too? Mm-hmm. He's clearly in a distressed situation, no matter.
And I'm sorry, the person of the family of the person that was so badly injured, the victim in this, they want to find the person too so that somebody can pay all these medical bills and be responsible.
It's heartbreaking that this innocent person was a consequence of decisions made and actions taken. And could it be, though, that Joe, balls were dropped left and right here? Because, like we said, Keith was believed to be strung out on drugs, and he fled a scene where an innocent driver was almost killed. It's hard to have empathy when you think that somebody fled a scene knowingly after they injured someone for self-preservation. I get it. I do. But like we always say, you got to do your job. Mm-hmm. You got to do the job that you took an oath to do and to stand up for. And we don't know what else they've been doing. We do know that there was a search conducted as recently as October 2023.
Okay.
They finally did a search, and a volunteer K-9 team came out that's been working really close with Sharmon, and we're searching for human remains. They did not find anything. Mm-hmm. Even Red Cross came out and provided food and water for the volunteers and the searchers and the police, and nothing came out of that. I mean, 5 years later, they would be able to pick up on scents of human remains. The dogs are trained to ignore animal remains. It is a hunting area, so that would make sense why those dogs would be trained to ignore animal
Wow.
But yeah. So as of recently,
Where is
it's
he?
like, well, if he fled the scene, it would make sense that he's not in that area. But some people wonder, what if he was injured and then died somewhere locally?
Yeah, that's what when I was talking about the head injury, I'm wondering if he fled to Mexico.
That is a theory you cannot rule out for any case where anybody goes missing that close to the border, whether they were kidnapped, whether they fled on their own volition. Yeah, I mean, sex trafficking is not...
The drug cartels, like it's...
Yeah, exactly, and that close, and knowing the circles he was already running in.
Yeah.
You've already got, one degree of separation. It wouldn't be that hard to believe that could happen. In a September 2023 article titled Keith Roberson Still Missing After 5 Years by reporter Eli Casaro, I want to read this to you, okay?
Okay.
Quote, Keith worked long hours for weeks or months at a time, taking only a week or two off in between. Before the accident, he was working as a supervisor north of Ozona, Texas. Keith's father joined him in working at the location and was staying in a hotel a few miles east of Ozona. Keith was staying in his RV as he usually did for work. On the evening of September 5th, 2018, Keith left work, headed eastbound on I-10 towards San Antonio, Texas. Keith called his mother when he left town. His mother said Keith sounded exhausted from work that day. Keith told his mother he was going to his dad's hotel to get some money for groceries, but he never arrived. Keith's mother said he did not seem out of sorts or under any influence at the time of their conversation, end quote. Interesting. It shows intent to go to his father's hotel. It shows intent of communicating with his father. It shows that he knew where his father was, the address. It's very interesting. If he was not on drugs, could he have been so exhausted that it was a head injury, some kind of disoriented state? And the truth is, we just
never
can't
know.
We can't know, and we can't rule out that innocent explanation too, just because he has a history of drugs.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I'd like to know where his phone was pinging that night. Like, we really need to know that. And I would also like the records to his father's phone.
Yeah.
I don't think we can justify that, but is there a way we could build a case to get those, or even just ask him, can you turn those over for us so we can rule you out, so we could stop wasting our time on this resource?
Does mom think dad's a suspect?
Yes.
Oh.
Yes.
No wonder why she regrets having him involved in his life.
Yes.
Oh.
Not a suspect in hurting Keith,
but knowing where he's at.
Yes.
Yeah.
Involvement.
Yeah.
Yes. So does Keith's mother believe that Keith is still alive? No. Sadly, no. Her son was so close with her. They spoke every week. She said after the second Christmas that came and went where he did not call her, she knew that her son was dead. But could he be alive? Yeah. We have to go down that road. Maybe, until confirmation of his
Has she
death.
hired a medium?
I'm not sure, Joe.
That'd be so fascinating.
It would be fascinating.
Some of them are quackery, but I think some of them are real.
It is really interesting. Interesting. My mind
Cindy
is
Kaza. That's who I'd be hiring right now.
Is that the Long Island medium?
No.
Oh,
She's better.
I just know her by
Shout
her
out
hair.
Cindy Kaza.
Okay. Until confirmation of death, there always has to be a small sliver of hope. Could he have fled the country with the aid of friends or the aid of his father, as some reports believe? Sharmon believes that Keith's father did help Keith lay low. But after Keith left his father's aid, that's when something happened to Keith. And his father was not involved in that as far as her belief. And she believes this because Keith, according to her, did not help with any of the search efforts for his son. She believes he knows more than he is letting on. And she also believes that whatever happened to Keith happened, like I said, after he left his father. Could this be drug related?
Yeah.
Yeah. Could it be mental health related? Yeah. Could it be both? Absolutely. Could it be that he is on the run out of fear of consequences for his actions?
Or physical injury?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Whatever the reasons, whatever the outcome, we really pray that Keith is brought home. There are full hearts and full lives behind every missing person story, y'all. And to feel like there's not enough being done to find the person you love the most in this world must be agonizing. The similarities to Kay Lana Turner's story are uncanny, and our hearts really do go out to everyone who is affected. But we have questions. Why does the sheriff of Sharmon's hometown, her childhood friend, his name is Trace Hendricks, why does he have to put pressure on Sutton County in order for them to activate basic search protocols?
Yeah.
Get this. Sutton County wouldn't collect Sharmon's DNA and submit it to this database, but Trace Hendricks was able to easily do it by ordering the kit himself and sending it in themselves.
Really?
Easily. I wanted to make sure that you have a place to go to get involved with this case or to follow along in case this speak resonated with you and spoke with you. So if you feel led to, this is from Ely's article that I mentioned above, quote, Sharmon, along with family and friends and many volunteers, continue to search for Keith Roberson. There is a $15,000 reward for the return of Keith to his family, dead or alive. If you have information regarding where Keith Dirty Roberson may be, please contact the Sutton County Sheriff's Office at 325-387-2288 or the Crockett County Sheriff's Office at 325-392-2661. For more information or updates, Trace and Sharmon have started a Facebook page titled Bring Keith Home, end quote. If you are in the Ozona or Sonora area, please help spread this case locally. Sometimes it just takes one share to change the course of a case. And you guys, it could come from you. I want to leave with a quote from Keith's mother, which I believe really exemplifies what we also believe here as a core value at True Crime and Headlines. Quote, even if his drug use has anything to do with this, it shouldn't make him less important than any other missing person. End quote.
I agree.
Help bring Keith home, guys. You matter, and you, yes, you deserve to be found. We love you guys, and we'll see you next week.
And Lee. I'll see. My mama is a podcaster. Mine too.